Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the discussion panel, which is conducted to evolve around the topic of recreating studio-based model for online design education. Um, with the COVID-19 restriction movements, a lot of the architecture education providers have actually moved from a physical face-to-face setting to a very much virtual setting. And one of the most impacted contexts for learning in architecture is the studio-based learning. It is the most important context because that is the core aspect of architecture design education. So today we have here a panel of speakers who will be joining us to respond to certain questions which evolve around studio-based learning. And I'd like to first introduce them. When I say the name, I would like the panel speakers to actually mention a few words about yourself. I would like to first introduce Architect Saifuddin. Architect
Hello,
Saifuddin.
I'm
Can
Saifuddin
you
here.
can you introduce yourself briefly? Where you're from, what you're doing?
Okay, I'm a director of SNO Architects in Berhad and also a principal of Saifuddin Architect. I've been practicing for over 35 years. I'm also the past president of council of Tubuhan Architect Malaysia and also vice president of Architect Regional Council Asia.
Thank you, Architect Saifuddin. Our next panel speaker is Associate Professor Chia Kok Ming from Singapore. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm coming from the Department of Architecture, NUS. Been teaching there since 2006. That makes about more than 10 years of teaching experience with the undergraduate as well as the master's program.
Okay, we'll have our third speaker, Prof. Hisham El-Kadi. Prof. Hisham, to you. Prof, you're muted.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Hisham and I'm currently the Dean of Architecture and the Built Environment at the University of Salford in Manchester. Before then, I was the head of school at Deakin University in Australia. I'm currently on sabbatical, so I spend most of my time in Frankfurt as a visiting professor at KIT in Karlsruhe.
Thank you, Prof. Hisham. Our next speaker, Prof. Luigi.
Good morning, I'm Luigi Croce and I work in Veneto, which is the northeast part of Italy. And I've done some teaching a lot of teaching in Venice and Udine. Presently, I am the director of a master course in restoration that we are planning to launch in Southeast Asia. But I'm also a practicing professional, and I'm also the president of an architectural association, which is the Venice Architectural Association.
Thank you, Prof. And our homegrown speaker, Dr. Camelia.
Okay. Hi, my name is Camelia Kusumo. I'm a senior lecturer in Taylor's University School of Architecture. And currently, I'm also the program director for our Master of Architecture program.
Okay, thank you all. Let's get the ball rolling. We have got quite a short period of time and hopefully we can cover as much questions as possible. So the session will evolve around a few questions and how it works is I'll be posting the question and the ball will get rolling from one speaker to the other. So the question that I would like to ask here is, amidst the COVID-19 context, be it currently where most of the countries are under movement restriction orders, and the future, the post-COVID context, how do you think we can grapple with the notion of studio-based learning in architecture education or in practice? Because I understand Architect Saifuddin, you are practicing more than in an architecture education context, but I believe the situation would be similar. So to you, Architect Saifuddin, if you can respond to that question.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Okay, I think virtual communication is nothing new. Even in practice, we have done it with some of our clients and some consultants before. But in the Malaysian context of the current pandemic lockdown, which was unexpected, so when it was first imposed on 13 March, they have taken everyone by surprise. And of course, not everyone was prepared to actually work from home or anywhere else for that matter. And the one that I've noted in the last couple of months, working with my clients and also with my own staff and also the sub-consultants, the most important thing is actually what platform do you want to use. You know, you have Zoom, you have Microsoft, you have Google, that sort of thing. And some of us doesn't even know how to download the apps. So, and not only that, based on my personal experience when we had actually a regional seminar throughout Asia, is the networking and also the coverage of the internet. Okay, it's so unfortunate that not everyone has a good networking internet and also the data. And sometimes, you know, maybe like this event, for example, I might be talking now and suddenly, you know, the internet breaks down. So it's all about the facilities need to be in place. And the other aspect is, of course, like what we had 2 months back at the beginning of the pandemic when we wanted to do our presentation to the client. Okay, and luckily what we did was actually we actually submitted our proposal much earlier, because what happened during that point of time, okay, which is actually on the client side, who the administrators to the whole session couldn't actually bring us into the whole exercise. So what was done was actually someone from the client side did the presentation on our behalf. Okay, so again, it's about preparation. Okay, everything had need to be in place. Most important thing is we have to ensure that the networking, the data is there. Okay, everybody is on the right platform. So other than that, I think once everything in place, nothing is impossible. Okay, but the only thing is to ensure that everyone is actually, you know, with all these things, you know, you can unmute yourself, you can remove the video, whether they are actually listening to you. Okay, because I'm still comfortable with actually the physical presentation, because I think as an architect, okay, and as a presenter, I would like to look at the audience, each of the audience, especially like in my case, when I do a presentation, I would like to have this, what they call eye contact, so that I can visualize and also understand whether they understand what I'm presenting. Okay. Again, you know, body language is very important. But then again, I think now we are getting used to it. We know what needs to be done. But as long as I mentioned earlier, the infrastructure is in place. That's all.
Thank you, Architect Saifuddin. I think we need to learn how to be more human in a very virtual world. Maybe we can then roll the ball to Kok Ming. How is it like in the National University of Singapore?
Well, I think we started, as you know, we will what we call movement. Your version of the movement restriction for 2 months since April, but within the university we were taking precautionary measures since March actually. So some of us already moved on to, who are not comfortable with face-to-face teaching, actually move on to a virtual platform in various ways, improvising. One of the most common improvisation was using the WhatsApp, in which students transfer drawings, share share sketches, and tutors spend the night responding to it, and the next day send back. So it's a kind of what we call very raw, very crude way of communicating, but at least the ideas get across. Subsequently, when we were instructed to go full virtual platform, thankfully there's Zoom. I think what was important for any virtual platform, the first stage is critical because most of us do not have an online teaching experience. I think most are educated because we were never educated in that condition. So this is really a deep end for us, and most important that software has to be able to at the initial stage to in a way mimic face-to-face condition. That means it is user friendly to allow you to transfer face-to-face analog approach onto the screen. So Zoom allows you to do that. Basically, it has three kind of features that's most important to teaching. One, of course, is a multiple audience engagement, as you know. And the other, of course, the ability to share screen. You could see drawings, you could see images, you could see video. And the third, of course, allows you to draw over it and comment. So that was available in this software, I suppose in other software like Concept Board, Milo, I heard. So these were tremendous help for the initial stages to get us onto online teaching and to get things going. Of course, there are many other issues with students not having laptop. We are also thankful that Wi-Fi was good connectivity. So of course the establishment created computer loans and students could also borrow computers from the lab to bring it home. So these infrastructure were quickly set in place to facilitate students in getting access to a virtual platform for learning. I think these are the key things. Of course, the second part that we face is that certain face-to-face benefits that we have cannot be mimicked on a virtual platform. One of which, of course, is peer learning beyond your own studio. I mean, in the past, in a large studio space, you could see another studio's progress. You can go over there and see models and all that. All those things are physical and you can know. But in a virtual studio, you could only see your own students. Your students could only see their own peer. So there is a limitation. There is a rethinking of what model to adopt so that you could also learn across studio. So that's one significant challenge. The other challenge, of course, we all experience is that when you have a full pin-out, you could see everything. You could see the model, you could see body language in order to evaluate the situation. But here, you're only stuck with the screen. So your processing is also very restricted. You can't make easy cross-reference in the student's presentation. So there are these two stages. I think the second stage is really demand us to really think laterally how we use the technology, not to mimic face-to-face, but to use it in the sense that the same result of face-to-face could be obtained, but through another kind of mode. So these are the kind of challenges and experience I can sort of, in this short time, share with all of you. That's all.
Thank you, Kok Ming. We'll move on to Prof. Hisham. How do you think in the context?
Right.
In the context,
I think we have complete rethink now about architecture education in a way. Because you cannot separate the presentation, the communication from the whole process of learning and from what we call the studio, what we mean by the studio and how that work in the future. While something like coronavirus is something that's probably will be temporarily and will move away from that, but we do think that this will change dramatically the architecture profession, not just for coronavirus, but coronavirus became the catalyst somehow for much more work to do. So if we think about architecture education, and I might touch on practice as well, we need to rethink the whole process. So if you think about architecture education and with the core of the design studio, we have the brief, and then we have the tutor, and then the students, and the process between tutor and students, and at the end is assessment. So if we talk about the brief, there will be a dramatic change of how we write briefs and what it means. So as I said, we are taking this as a catalyst for the future, because the idea of public place, the idea of flexibility, the idea of lightweight construction, all that will change, and our briefs have to respond to that. One major challenge of the brief for students is that understanding and comprehension of space and scale, because they live in a virtual environment and most of their lives is virtually, and this sort of process make it more virtual than real. So how they comprehend a scale, and how our brief will respond to that. How we create a digital site for them and engage with them on a digital site. What did that mean? I did that actually when I was in Karlsruhe. We have a project with the city on expansion of Karlsruhe towards the Rhine. And we engage our master students in KIT with that. And we had in the second half of the project to really limit our interaction to digital tutoring as well as digital assessment at the end. So that changed our perception of what is the site and how can we engage with them on the site. Basically, it's about digital data and how we provide them with digital data in different formats. And we got the city to work with us on this, and they have been very innovative in Germany actually with the provision of digital data in different formats. So the other thing about the brief is flexibility, that how we can provide new ideas and new concept of architecture for the future, whether in digital space or flexible space, whether it's urban, how the cities in the future would look like, simple things like how the emergency department in hospitals would look like. So all these new ideas, should we engage with that for post-COVID and the expectation that pandemic would become more normal in the future. How the city restaurants would be designed differently, how open spaces will be different, and so on. So our brief has to respond to that. I don't want to talk too much, but so I stop here about the brief. Then it comes the tutor, and some of you have touched on that already. But we have different skills for different tutors, and some of them, they don't engage very much with digital. Most of them are moving into the digital world now. Architecture education on the globe has not moved as fast as the industry. And we know now, RIBA recently posted that at the moment, 35% of architects in the United Kingdom are not only using digital, because that's about 80% now, but they use augmented reality, 35%. I mean, that is huge in a very short time. So, and how much augmented reality we are using in the architecture education, I'm not quite sure. So this is reality, really. RIBA has produced last year a very interesting report on transformation of digital digital architecture, the architecture in the digital world. Very good report. So it is a reality now, and our education has to respond to that. So tutors have to upgrade their skills, and it's a problem for us. The other thing which we have to provide in the university for the tutors are the tools. Most of you mentioned the platform, but it's more than the platforms, and whether we should have unified platforms. So some of our tutors now, they are using Teams. Some using collaborative a system, a platform called Collaborative. And they use that with some of the whiteboards and some of them with other systems. So everybody's using a different system, and that's confused the students, of course. So whether we leave innovation or whether we can unify the tools, that's another challenge for us. And what can we provide? Do we have to provide digital pens for all tutors, and how is that going to work, and so on? So big challenge for management of architecture departments anyway. So tutors is important, and then the students. And we found very interesting things happening when with students this year. That some of the students, which there was impression that they are not as good, right? They perform very well in the digital world, while the others who are really talk very well and extrovert and so on, they really didn't do so well in the virtual environment. We did ask. I remember I asked one of the students why is that the case, and he was saying that it was the physical world is very intimidating. So he found a space of himself in the virtual world, and he was more comfortable and more coming forward with ideas and videos, and he was doing very well. So we need to understand the psychology of students and how they react to this new environment, and it is very different. It's absolutely very different. So so I'm not quite sure if we really should be mimicking the physical world, or we can embrace completely a different way of engaging with those students who are, as Veronica said, you're calling them new human things. They are not new human. They have been digital human for a few years now. So this, what can we do with them? I mean, they are very different, and we need to understand that. Anyway, I think I covered my time now, and there is a question about assessment. But the most important thing is the studio. And I just want to say one sentence about that the new studio have to be very different. And there is a chance here to make a real design studio together. Because one of the problem of the old studio, that it is knowledge that created among certain group. And when this group disappear, the knowledge with them disappear. So how can we build a continuous studio on knowledge, create knowledge in the virtual world that become a design studio, continuous design studio for Taylor School of Architecture, for example? I remember, Veronica, when you were working by yourself in one room in the middle of Cal. I remember this. And look at Taylor's now. Camelia doesn't understand that history. But looking at it now, I mean, it's a complete journey that that transform Taylor, and I think the digital world would have that much impact in very short term.
Thanks, Prof. Hisham. Before we move on to Prof. Luigi, I'd just like to prompt the audience that if you have any questions, you can post it on Slido, and we will take questions at the close to the end of the session. Yeah, now we'll move on to Prof. Luigi for your response to the question on how do we deal with the current and post-COVID situation on design studio learning.
Right, let me put the general picture. I mean, differently from others, I do not think that this virus will completely change our life. It has definitely changed our lives in this period, I mean, for obvious reason, but I think that we will soon think and hope that we will soon revert to the previous condition. And I do not think that the virus will have permanent effects on our way of living either, because it has happened in the past already with other illness, with other virus, with other shocks that societies have experienced. But then there is a resilience, there is a sort of resistance to this sort of abrupt changes that bring us back to the past and to our sort of comfortable way of dealing with things. In the general sense, nevertheless, this lockdown has allowed us to experience a new way of communicating with other people, especially students, which can be used in two, at least I can see two different directions. One is the international contacts. I mean, this is, for example, an example. We are there, and I'm in Venice, and you are in KL or whatever, and we are talking sort of in a quite efficient way, I hope. So this model of distant learning and communicating can be a way to ease and to make less expensive international communication, international researches, international networking on various subjects. Therefore, also in architectural education and theory and research and so on. The other thing is that it could be a very interesting model of continuing education, because I mean, the life expectancy has risen in the recent years from, say, the decades 1985, 1995, which were around in the war 65 years, is now around 72 years in a few decades. So it's unlikely that what you have learned when you were 20 is still sort of viable now. And it's also likely that you will have more than one career. And in any case, that your education needs to be improved, refreshed. And so this model of distant learning and education can be used in that direction also, and can be sort of used also alongside the traditional face-to-face studies for students and make them probably more affordable, because obviously it's less expensive to be in your own house, listen to a lecture, interact with the professor, and not spending money to be actually in campus, to actually move to another location, and so on. And maybe tuition and fees could be in that sort of mixed model, real, virtual, less expensive. So this is a third possibility. Now, zooming in about the studio-based experience, that is the most tricky situation, because what is a studio? I mean, I'll give you my experience. A studio is, I deal with studios in two different ways. One way is to sit on a desk, at a desk, and have the students in front of me, opening all the drawings, and I will sort of comment on the drawings and draw with him. And this is a sort of one-to-one experience. Of course, there will be other students around us, sort of trying to pick up something and to learn something. And the other way is the pinup. The pinup is very, very difficult to replicate, because you have many different drawings, different formats. Most of them are very informal. The sense there are sketches, different scales, different techniques. Some are computer designed drones, some are hand sketches, and normally the panel is quite big in itself. So technically, it's very difficult to replicate that. I know that with Zoom you can draw yourself, but you can do one thing and then show that one thing to the audience, to the virtual audience. Whereas the studio experience is having a lot of people watching a lot of drawings, seeing me commenting on the drawings, see the replies from the students, the debate. It is very difficult to replicate, and I would say impossible. What I have done so far is this. I ask students to send me their PDF in advance so that I could get prepared and already prepare a set of correction, if you like, a set of editing of those PDF drawings that they sent me in advance. And then I was showing to the audience, to the particular students, but also to the general audience, to the other members of the studio, what my comment, my correction, my editing was. But still, that is not as comprehensive, is not as I would say stimulating as the real experience, which is informal, which is sort of made of many different things like face mimics, jokes, whatever, which is very difficult to find and to replicate in the virtual world. So I think that there is, especially because if it was another subject, but with architecture, where the core of the educational system is based on studio, it is quite difficult to do that. With chemistry or say economics, it will be much easier because they do not need drawings. They do not need this sort of interaction between student and profession. It's quite unique in our profession, in our educational system, and I don't think that could be replicated. So I can see for the future, but not for the virus, but just because it's an extra opportunity, a mixed system where the traditional lecture could be almost quite easily substituted by distant lectures, but the studio-based is very, very difficult to replicate. So I don't think that could be totally substituted by a virtual world, whereas traditional lecture can. So I can see a mix of techniques where there will be a face-to-face experience on the studio, and all the other lectures could be sided by the virtual experience of Zoom or whatever technology you're using.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Luigi. We'll move on to Dr. Camelia, closer to home, for your response to studio-based model for online design education.
Thank you, Dr. Veronica. Yeah, I will try to make it very brief. In principle, I think it's interesting actually to see different point of views regarding the studio-based learning and to learn as well the experiences from different contexts and as well as from different countries. In our university in Taylor's, online learning is not something new. In fact, the university has encouraged us actually to move to virtual learning since last year's. So many of our lecturers had actually had done the trial as well, actually did the training how actually to do some kind of virtual learning. But at this moment, when the MCO was announced, it was taken as us by surprise, because originally many of us was a bit skeptic of moving to online learning. But anyway, I think most of us now has embraced it, and some of our lecturers actually managed actually to transform actually the analog learning actually to the online learning, even for the studio base. So it's still a long way to go, but I think we believe that maybe for the futures that this actually will change how actually we educate the architects. And especially for the studio-based learning, I personally believe that the virtual learning is of course interesting. I think especially when Prof. Hisham mentioned about the transformation to the AR and VR technology, which is actually we also already started because we already have a VR studio at this moment. So, but I do believe in the same times that architecture, especially the studio-based learning, is still experiential learning. So the understanding of the materials, to work with your hands, to draw with your hand is actually still an important part of the education. So, so the future will be, I believe personally, will be a blended learning. So not purely virtual or purely analog like before, but it's actually much more blended. Yeah, I'm in a way personally excited and looking forward actually to these transformations. Okay, Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Camelia. The time is almost running out and we will not be able to take any questions. Before we end, I'd like to wrap up this session. I think the speakers have mentioned from different contexts, from different countries, how they perceive the future of studio-based learning within the post-COVID, and how that could very differently provide a different landscape to how students learn. But I think we all have covered the importance of technology, the importance of a system to things, the curriculum, how would that change architecture, the tutor's role, the students' experience, how do we sustain them motivationally, and also the social aspect of learning in architecture. I think there are just so many questions that we are not possibly be able to grapple this within 30 minutes of our time. But I am very happy that this session is able to anchor some of the problems and actually bring together different people from different parts of the world. And we all are clear that it is a shared problem, probably different resolutions, different solutions. But I think this discussion will need to carry on in different contexts in the future. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers for coming onto this virtual broadcasting studio today. And we thank you for the opinions that you have contributed to us. And we'll definitely have more discussions in the coming months or coming years. So thank you once again. And for the audience, thank you for joining us. I hope that you find this session fruitful as a starting point. And before we end the session, I would like to remind the audience that you can proceed to the virtual campus tour if you would like to view the campus, and it will be targeted towards the Faculty of Innovation and Technology. So once again, a big applause and thank you to the speakers as well as the audience. Thank you.
Okay.